Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for Yulio's first ever Jump Week. To kick off Jump Week today, we have Yulio Jump for Revit, and over the next 2 days, we will be covering SketchUp and CET as well. Today, we'll focus on establishing a practical Revit to VR workflow and explore how integrating VR and AR in your presentations can truly enhance your client-facing process. So, some of you on today's webinar may be familiar with Yulio, and others may be looking for a refresher. And that is totally fine because today we're going to cover a deep dive for everybody. Our main objective for today is to cover rendering for VR and AR using the Yulio plugin for Revit. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we will also look at preparing your model for rendering and viewing and sharing your project post-render. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter them in the question box and I will answer them all at the end of our session. So before we jump in, my name is Dana Warren and I'm the Manager of Client Success here at Yulio and the host of today's webinar. My contact information is on the screen, so if you'd like to follow up on today's webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll also share this at the end if you also want to grab it then. Lastly, if you do have to leave today's session early, I am recording the full webinar and will send it to all registrants so you'll be able to watch it later and you can share it with your team as well if you like. So, I find that VR experiences really help in immersing your clients in your designs and help them to understand size, scale, and flow much more effectively than 2D images or plans. It really creates those wow moments and truly engages customers like never before. So we're going to jump in and we're going to start out by talking about what Yulio Jump is and then how to use it. So before we do anything, we want to look at installing Yulio Jump for Revit. So for those of you that are new to Yulio, Yulio Jump is a cloud rendering engine that can render your projects in minutes and can auto-apply navigation and lighting enhancements to turn your model into a VR-ready experience. So to begin rendering, like I said, you need to start off by installing the Yulio Jump for Revit plugin, which can be downloaded directly from the Autodesk store. The Yulio plugin is free to download. However, in order to use it, you do need an active Yulio license. So with the Yulio plugin, you can render 360 panoramas, so the file that you need for VR, as well as augmented reality assets and 2D perspective renders. So this is what those two files look like. So on the left-hand side here, we have like your regular generic 2D perspective render that you're probably used to rendering up until using Yulio and VR. And on the left-hand side here, this is what the file type looks like for those 360 panorama renders that you're generating out of Yulio Jump for Revit. So I'm going to jump right into Revit. Now that we have our plugin installed, let's talk about how we can start to prepare our model for rendering. So this is the model that I'm working with today. And before you render, you're just going to want to think about how you might need to prepare your space. So for a virtual walkthrough experience, we do recommend creating a fully enclosed building shell type environment. So with all four walls, a ceiling, and a floor kind of at minimum, like I have here. And it's important to remember that when rendering for VR, your clients are not only seeing what's right in front of them, because in VR, your clients will be able to fully explore your space. So having that fully enclosed building will give them that more realistic and immersive experience in VR. And then, not to get into too many details yet on the render settings, but the Yulio Jump lighting models are also optimized to work best in these types of environments, which we're going to touch on lighting in more detail in just a couple of minutes. So the first thing that I want to do is touch on creating your views for VR. So that's kind of the bare minimum of what you need in your Revit model to be able to render for Yulio are at least one 3D view that you have created. Now, one piece of advice I have before you start creating your views is to think about the journey that you would like your client to have while they're touring your environment and plan out a little bit of a route or a journey. So, for example, do you picture them entering at the front door and moving clockwise throughout the space? Or do you picture them moving in a straight line directly from the front to the back? So think about that journey a little bit, and then you can create your 3D views accordingly. So the views that you create here in Revit will be the scenes that make up your VR project in Yulio. Now, generally, we recommend that you place at least like 2 to 3 views around a small space in your model. Having one 3D view in VR, it can definitely help to give your clients an understanding of your space, but it can also leave like a rather limited and stationary feel. So having more than one view gives your clients a more representative feel for the space and will help to develop an impressive VR walkthrough. And I do also want to say the number of 3D views that you create for every environment will change, and it will vary project to project. So smaller spaces you might only want 3 or 4 views versus larger spaces you might want 10 or 15 or 20 views around your space. So it really will vary. Around this space currently, I have 7 different views that I've set up. But again, you could have 15 different views in here, especially if you want to show off some of these smaller offices and conference rooms. So it really is up to you. So to create a view, all you want to do is navigate to the desired floor plan that you would like to create your view on. And then we're just going to go to the View tab here and then go to 3D View and Camera. Oops. And all we're doing once we do that here is we're going to place the camera where we would like to create our view. So again, that's why I mentioned kind of thinking about the journey and how many cameras you want and where you want to place them. So just click to place your camera, and then you're extending the view box and just click again to create that view. Now, once you place your view, you do have the option to adjust eye elevation and target elevation. And generally, we recommend that you place your eye elevation at about 5'6". It's a really good kind of average standing height for your typical VR walkthrough experience. You can get really creative with it. We have seen users kind of raise that eye elevation up to create a bird's eye view of the space. We've seen them lower it down and get underneath an object to kind of show the mechanics of it. We've also seen some of our users place that camera right over top of a chair and lower that eye elevation down to create like a seated perspective. So you definitely have some creativity and flexibility to play around with, but at kind of your generic VR standing walkthrough, we recommend that 5'6" height. Now, all of the views that you create will show up here under your 3D views section. You can right click on them to rename them at any time. We do recommend kind of renaming them before you render with Yulio. It'll just save you a little bit of time on the back end. So you can stick with camera 1, 2, 3, 4 if you want, or you can do like reception area, meeting room, whatever it might be. You can get creative with your view names as well. And then just repeat those steps, of course, to create as many different views as you like around your space. So we've already gone ahead and set up a couple of views that we're going to use to render our project together today. Okay, so now let's touch on lighting. So Yulio Jump was really designed to simplify the rendering process as much as possible and take complexities like lighting off of your hands. So currently in the Yulio Jump for Revit plugin, we have 4 different lighting models to choose from. We have Revit environment lighting, exterior, interior, and Revit neutral materials. And we'll discuss the benefits of each so you know which one will work best for your project. So the first one is the Revit environment lighting model. So this one is the one that we recommend using. And this lighting model will give you the best render result and will provide the most realism for your space. And you have kind of the most customization over it. This lighting model is the most advanced, and when using it, Yulio Jump will render any and all lighting that you have placed in your space and will acknowledge them as light sources. So the only thing to note here is that obviously in order to use this lighting model, you do have to have lighting in your model. So that's really the one thing to think about. And I'm going to go through and show you what all of these lighting models look like in just a second. The second lighting model that we have in the plugin is called the neutral materials lighting model. What this one will do is essentially it's a neutral mode. So this is a great lighting model that allows you to focus on making design decisions faster because it removes all materials and finishes. And actually, let me just jump to it right now. There we go. So this really allows you to focus on spatial decisions. And when you select this lighting model, like you can see here, what's happening is we're removing all materials, textures, and finishes that you have applied and replacing it with this neutral tone. And then next up, we have the last two, which are the exterior and interior lighting models. These ones are great because they require minimal user modification, so you don't have to worry about placing any lighting in your space. So the exterior lighting model will work best in an environment with windows, maybe even a skylight. And what this lighting model does is it accurately simulates what would happen in the real world. So it simulates like an artificial sun with a skylit or skybox type of lighting model. So this one is more physically correct than the interior lighting model, meaning that any like shadows or projection you're seeing will look more realistic because, again, this is literally simulating how light moves in the real world. And then the last one is the interior lighting model. So this one will work best in an environment with very few or no windows. And what it does is produces like an artificial light source within your space that artificially adjusts the lighting so the space will be evenly lit. Okay, so let's take a look at the differences here. So here we have the Revit environment lighting model. So you can see all of our lights are on the ceiling. Everything's being acknowledged as a light source. Versus the exterior lighting model, you can see all of your ceiling lighting is there, but it's off. So it's being rendered as an object, but not a light source. And we can see the sun kind of really brightly coming in through the windows there. And then the last one here, we have our interior lighting model. So again, we have, especially you see a difference back here where that what it's doing is producing that artificial light source that evenly lights your space. So those are the differences. Again, in my opinion, kind of the Revit environment lighting provides the most realism. So if you have the time and you have all the lighting in your space, I do recommend that one. One thing that I do like to recommend as well is because rendering with Yulio Jump, especially when you're working with like a smaller model and only rendering one or two scenes, it can be incredibly fast. So what I like to do before committing to rendering the full project is I'll render like one or two scenes and figure out which lighting model I like best. And then, so render those one or two scenes and then go ahead and render the full project. So it's really nice because it is quicker and cloud-based. You can spend a couple minutes to render each lighting model to try it out first. Okay, let's jump back to Revit. Now, the next thing I want to mention before we jump into the actual Yulio plugin is AR tagging. So if you don't already know, Yulio offers fully automated augmented reality publishing directly from Revit. So this is an optional enhancement to your VR project. You definitely don't have to add it in, but it's a really, really nice benefit to add to your VR project if you like. So what it means is that this enhancement allows you to incorporate an AR hotspot into your VR experience. And Yulio is going to take care of doing all of that for you. So for your clients, it means that they can see they can see different project elements like furniture or feature walls, light fixtures, whatever it might be. They can see those individual elements in full augmented reality and place it into their own space and see how it'll fit and interact. To export augmented reality assets and have them be created as an AR hotspot in your VR project is really, really simple. All you have to do is tag the items that you'd like using Yulio's AR tagging convention. So what you have to do to start out here is we're just going to start out by selecting the object or the objects that you would like to tag as an AR asset, sorry. If you only want to tag one object, just select your one, or if you want to select multiple, just hold down that control button and select the objects that you would like to be a part of your AR asset. And then all you have to do is come up here and select this create group icon. And then this is the important step. You're going to use Yulio's AR tag, so our naming convention, and you do have to be pretty specific with this. So all you have to do is do hashtag Yulio AR equals, and then you can label this whatever you want. So you can call it table and chairs or desk or seating area, whatever you want to call it. And then that's it. So just hit OK. And now essentially what's going to happen, that's literally all you have to do. Those three objects are going to be grouped together now. And when we go to render our project, those three objects are going to be created as an augmented reality asset automatically for you. So that's all you have to do. You can repeat those steps as many times as you like, depending on how many different AR assets you want to feature in your experience. So again, you're not limited to like the desk and chairs. If you wanted to do like this light fixture, or if you have, we had a user who had like a greenery wall, so like a live wall, and they actually tagged that and they put that into their AR experience so that their client could put it into their actual physical environment and see what it would look like before they committed to it. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. And again, you can see how easy it is just to select the object, hit create group, and then put in Yulio's naming convention. Okay, so now that we have set up our camera views, we've tagged our optional AR models, what we're ready to do is render with Yulio. So to begin, we're just going to click the add-ins tab and then find our Yulio Jump plugin. We're going to ignore that. And then the plugin will come up. Now, the first time you go to use the plugin, you will have to put in your Yulio login information. This is essentially just telling Yulio that you have an account and you can render. And then as soon as you put in your login information, the actual plugin will come up. So once you're in here, these are all of the different settings that you have to customize. So let me just pull this up. Perfect. Okay, so your company, you don't need to worry about that. You can ignore that. You'll be assigned to one company within Yulio. Next up here, we have render with. So I mentioned that you can create 360 panoramas or 2D perspective renders. So essentially what you're doing here is just telling Yulio which one you'd like to render. So Yulio Jump will generate your 360 panoramas and send them directly to your Yulio account, versus Yulio Jump Perspective will create those 2D perspective renders, and those files will be emailed to you. So it's the exact same rendering engine, the exact same process. Literally the only difference here is you're telling Yulio which type of file you would like it to render. So we're going to select Yulio Jump to render our VR experience, so it's sent directly to our Yulio account. Next up here, you can select out of the 4 lighting models that you'd like to use to render. I'm going to do the Revit environment lighting. I've tested them before. I know which one I like best. And I will say that as you use Yulio more and more, you'll just know what works best depending on your model. It won't be like you test it every time. For me, generally, I know that the Revit environment lighting model works best for the types of models that I work with. So I do tend to just pick that one every time right off the hop. Next up here, you have the option to select which folder in your Yulio account you would like the project to be uploaded to. So the project or the folder does have to be pre-existing in your Yulio account. However, don't worry if it's not. You can always create the folder and move your projects around afterwards in Yulio. It's really, really simple on the Yulio platform side to keep things nice and organized. Next up here, we're going to select our scenes. So this is literally just selecting which 3D views you would like Yulio to render. So you can select all of them. You can select a couple. It's totally up to you depending on which views you want to include in your render. And then next up here, we have our enhancement options. So by selecting this Add Navigation Hotspots box, Yulio will auto-generate navigation hotspots for your project. And navigation hotspots is Yulio's form of point-to-point navigation, which allows you to move from one view to the next in a really seamless walkthrough type and walkthrough experience. So if you check that off, Yulio will take care of all of those and auto-generate them for you in your experience. Next up here, add augmented reality assets. So you'll want to select this if there's any items in your design that you have tagged for AR, like we just did. And then when you select this, all the objects you've tagged will be created and inserted into your VR project as an interactive AR hotspot. And then next up, we have this add floor plan option. So this will upload your chosen floor plan to your VR experience in Yulio. This is really helpful to allow your viewers to orient themselves in the space. So the floor plan will contain all the scenes you choose to render that we just selected here in select scenes. Any floor plan in your project can be used. So you see you have the list here of all of them. However, what I do want to say is the cameras that you've selected for rendering do have to be within the boundaries of your selected floor plan. So for example, if one of the cameras is outside of your floor plan boundary, you will receive an error. So just keep that in mind. And then a couple other tips for floor plans. For best results, you can enable the floor plan's crop box so that the size adjustments can be made accurately. And then we also recommend using the shaded or realistic style in the floor plan's graphic display menu. It does typically yield an aesthetically pleasing result in Yulio. So we saw that when we were on our floor plan, we just selected the shaded style for this render. And then the last box here in our plugin automatically send this project to your headset. So what this means is that it will automatically send the experience to your headset gallery and load the project on any headsets that you have connected to your account. So just a bit of a time saver there, which is really nice. Now, once you've selected all your preferences, you can hit this Create Project button. The time to process and render definitely depends on the size and complexity of your project. To give you an idea, with this experience that I'm working with right now, this model that I'm working with all the scenes, the AR assets that I've selected, should only take me about 5 minutes to render. And again, it's all cloud-based, so you can run additional renders in Revit. You can continue working on your model. And you will receive an email to let you know when the project has finished rendering. And then again, if you select Yulio Jump Perspective, it simplifies a lot because literally all you're doing with this one is selecting the views. There's no navigation hotspots or anything like that. So in this case, again, you'll receive an email with the rendered images that you can download there. Okay, so I'm just going to exit out of this. I have pre-rendered the project just so we don't have to wait for it to fully render. So I'm just going to go to my Yulio account now, and I'm going to open it up. Okay, so we're just going to start off by viewing our project in browser mode. So this is what your experience will look like directly out of Yulio Jump. We have our auto-generated navigation hotspots. We have our auto-generated augmented reality hotspots. And then we also have our automatically generated floor plan. So if we click on our navigation hotspots here, we can view different areas of the space and move around. So again, those are the automatically generated ones for you. And then if we open up our floor plan, what's really nice here is the blue marker shows us exactly where we're standing, and then the red markers are all different areas we can navigate to around our space. So again, this is what I was talking about at the beginning in terms of thinking about the journey that you want your viewer to take around the space, because these are essentially the 3D views that you set up. So this is where they are able to navigate to within your space. So just make sure you cover off all of your bases. Once you render a project in Yulio, it's never like complete. You always have the option of adding or editing your scenes. So if you render 5 scenes and then you decide you want to add 5 more, you definitely have the option to do that from your edit project page. So every single project that you create in Yulio has a page that looks just like this. So it has your assets tab. So this is where your 3D views will generate this once they're rendered out of Revit. And then you have a list of all of your AR models and your floor plan. So this is essentially what you can expect straight out of the Yulio Jump plugin. Now, on this page here, you have the option to upload additional enhancement content to your experience. So we have audio, images, and video. I'm not going to dive into that too much today, but we do have additional webinars coming up next month that are dedicated to, one of them is actually dedicated to enhancing with Yulio. So if you are interested, those are on November 7th and November 20th, and I'll share a link so you can sign up at the end of the webinar. Now, one thing you'll notice when we have our experience and our hotspots are automatically generated for you, one thing that you might like to do is adjust them slightly, whether it's you want to hide the label or adjust the label, you want to bring this hotspot closer to you, or delete different hotspots, whatever you might want to do. You, of course, have the option to fully edit any of these hotspots that Yulio auto generates for you. And you can just do that right here in the hotspot editor. So again, you can move these around and place them if you'd like to. You can adjust the labels, or you can add external links. So again, I'm not going to go into that too much now. Those will be covered in detail in our November webinars. So I definitely recommend that you sign up for those, because that'll do like a deep dive on the hotspot editor itself. All right. Now, one thing I want to touch on is viewing in VR, because while viewing in browser mode is a really great experience, it isn't true VR. So viewing in a VR headset provides that immersive viewing experience because it feels like you're actually standing in the space. Now, we recommend the Meta Quest headset to view in VR because it offers the best viewing experience at an affordable cost. So once you connect your headset to your Yulio account, viewing in VR is incredibly simple. You just have to click this headset icon right here, and you'll see that it's automatically sent to any headsets that you have connected to your account. And in your Yulio account, you have this headsets tab here. This is where you can connect any headsets to your account and also manage which experiences are on your headset. So you can have up to 20 experiences pre-downloaded, so you can also view them offline in your headset. Now, going back to our experience for a minute, I just want to touch on AR hotspots. You can view AR hotspots on a computer, like we're going to do in a second, but you can also view them on a phone or tablet, or the best viewing experience is viewing your AR hotspots on the Meta Quest headset. So we'll go through each right now. So in browser mode, to view an AR hotspot, you just have to click on the hotspot itself. I'm going to skip over that just for a second and come back to it. And then really the only capabilities you have in browser mode on your computer are to rotate it, zoom in on it, and just kind of view it as is. The next level of viewing your AR hotspot would be to view it on a phone or a tablet, because this will allow you to place the AR model in your physical space. So if you scan this QR code with your phone or your tablet, this you'll actually be able to pull up this table in your physical space. So let me just go back here. I want to show you a video of what this looks like. Okay. So if you're viewing the experience on your computer, you would scan that QR code with your phone or your tablet. If you're already viewing the experience, like I was there on my tablet, you can just simply click on the AR hotspot. What it's going to do is just scan your space, and then your element will pop up. So you can see that you can interact with it, you can place it, you can walk around it. So it's a really cool experience viewing it on your phone or your tablet. And then again, the last one that I want to touch on, and it's my favorite way to view AR hotspots, is using the MetaQuest headset. So this is a little sneak peek of what it looks like in the headset. It is definitely like the phone experience. However, it's a lot more kind of realistic and immersive. I really like it because you can use the controllers to rotate it. You can walk around it. You can bring it up close. You can look underneath it. It's just a really, really cool experience viewing it on that MetaQuest headset, and really does make it feel more realistic while you're seeing your own environment in the headset and the object you're trying to fit in. Okay, now the last thing that I want to touch on before we end off for today is a potential workflow if you're using a different rendering engine to create your 360 panoramas for VR. Now, we have quite a few Yulio users who prefer Yulio for our sharing and enhancement features, but who want to use a different rendering engine to actually create those 360 panoramas. And one group of those users that we have are those users who use Enscape in tandem with Yulio to create VR experiences. Now, the best part of using Yulio and Enscape is how Yulio makes sharing large projects convenient and easy through our URL sharing. And I mean, Yulio's extensive line of enhancement features really allow you to take your experience to that next level. So, the way that our users are using Yulio and Enscape together is that they're using Yulio to create the bones of the experience. So, you get this experience that you can fully navigate using Yulio's auto-generated navigation, hotspots, and floor plan. You can take advantage of the augmented reality assets, again, using Yulio Jump. But then what you would do is you would upload your rendered Enscape 360 panoramas to Yulio using Yulio's replace function. So what I've done here is I have my rendered 360 panoramas from Enscape. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use Yulio's replace function to swap out the rendered source file. So this allows me to keep kind of the bones that Yulio built. It allows me to keep my floor plan, my navigation hotspots. It allows me to share my projects with ease and present them, but I want to use my Enscape renders. So I'm just going to use this replace function. You can see it's keeping all of your data for you. It's literally just swapping out the source files. So I'm just going to go ahead, and you can see they're the exact same perspective. So that is the one thing to keep in mind. If you're swapping out the source files, you want the perspective to be the same or pretty close. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag and drop that into my upload box here. It's just going to do a quick upload of the actual file, and then we'll just hit continue, and essentially it's just going to swap out those files. So again, what it does is it allows you to take advantage of Yulio's seamless presenting, sharing, and enhancing features while using the rendering engine you already know and love. But I do definitely recommend still trying Yulio Jump as an alternative for kind of that all-in-one solution. So again, we'll just hit replace, and then you'll see it'll swap out the files after a brief processing period. Okay, now that will wrap up our Yulio Jump for Revit webinar. I know that was a lot of information to take in a short amount of time, but I hope that you were able to learn about Yulio Jump and how seamlessly it can fit into your workflow. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. If you have any questions and you haven't submitted them yet, feel free to do that now. I'm going to stick around for the next few minutes to answer those. As a reminder, if you do want to book a training session with me or chat about anything we didn't cover today, my email is on screen, so please feel to reach out and I'll gladly work with you to set up a time. Of course, email me at any time if any questions or anything pop up later on. And then also that webinar link for our webinar schedule and registration link is on screen there. It's just try.yulio.com/webinars. If you do have to sign off now, again, thank you so much for joining me today. But if you are able to stick around and you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the box and I will go through and answer them now. Okay, so we have a question here. Can I render multiple floor plans in Revit? So this is a really good question. Currently, as of today, the short answer from Revit using Yulio Jump would be no. However, it is a feature that we have been working on for a while, and I can definitely say it's coming soon. In the meantime, what you can actually do is you can use Yulio as kind of a workaround. So you can actually upload multiple different floor plans to one VR experience and then add all of your floor plan hotspots accordingly. So in Yulio, yes, it is definitely possible. You can upload 5 different floor plans or however many you want here. However, rendering straight out of Revit, currently you are limited to 1 floor plan at a time using Yulio Jump. So my recommendation would be to render each floor plan separately and then combine the floor plans and the scenes together. And now if you want to go over this together, I'm more than happy to, so please reach out to me. But essentially you would just be uploading new scenes to your existing projects in Yulio and then uploading, again, your additional floor plan and then linking everything together in the hotspot editor. However, like I said, rendering multiple floor plans using Yulio Jump is coming soon directly from Revit. Okay, and then we just have another question here. So if I need to make an adjustment, do I have to re-render the whole thing? So no, you definitely don't have to. So if you have a project that you've already spent a lot of time adding all of your enhancements, or it was just a large project and you have like 30 scenes rendered and you don't want to have to redo the whole thing, but you want to make an adjustment like to one scene. So whether you need to swap out the color of a wall or you need to add a room somewhere, you definitely can. So for example, when you re-render out of Yulio Jump for Revit, it will create that new render as a new project. So what you can do is you can download that scene from your new experience. It will download the file to your computer. You don't have to worry about loss of quality or anything like that. And then what you can do is use that same replace function and just swap out the source files. So again, we talked about it in the sense of using Yulio and Enscape together, but it goes the same if you need to make an adjustment to like one scene, for example. Literally just swap out those source files and it will keep everything as is. So you won't lose any analytic data, any annotations that you've added, your hotspots. So it will keep everything as is and just swap out those files. You can also upload the scene as a new scene to your project. So if you're not adjusting something within an existing scene, you can also add to an existing project just by dropping that source file into the upload box here. Okay. I don't see any other questions. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if anybody has anything. Yeah, otherwise, thanks again for joining.